On episode 11 of this podcast last year, we had Ryan Duart, lead singer of Post Paradise, on the show. I do not know why I didn't feature their music on that episode. You live and learn. But I love their music, and check them out on Spotify and iTunes if you do too. Here's a sample of Post Paradise from the track called Digging Secrets.
That's on your tongue. It reminds you of where you have been, even though you just begun. Now you're here, and you just don't care what you'll uncover.
Hello and welcome to the NoCo. This is the podcast bringing wonder and connection to the northern Colorado area, one conversation at a time. I am your host, Ivan Wayne. Listener, get ready for today's episode. I was blown away when I first met Gavin Roy. Our guest is a widely recognized celebrity in 2 other countries, but not here in northern Colorado. How is that? Well, Gavin has a career utilizing YouTube to teach English to Portuguese speakers living in Brazil and Czech speakers in the Czech Republic, or Czechia. Between his 2 YouTube channels, Gavin is nearing 2 million subscribers and was featured on the biggest late-night talk show in Brazil. He is fascinating, and I'll let him tell you more about his life and journey. Now, on to our conversation. Hello, listeners. Welcome to the NoCo. I sit here in the home of Gavin Roy. Before we get started today, I must admit to you and the listeners that you are the white whale of the NoCo.
Wow.
So,
it's an honor.
It's an honor. So for people who don't know, which is literally everyone, we recorded an episode back in October. And you live here in Fort Collins, driving home to Greeley, got home, was like, that was a fun conversation with Gavin, sit down, and this warm shock feeling came over my body when I realized that my laptop microphone had been switched, and our entire conversation was recorded by my laptop and not the microphone, so we had to scrap it. And then we decided it would probably sound canned if I had you back on the show immediately, so here we sit in March, and first of all, thank you.
5 months later. Wow.
Yeah. Thank you for for being willing to be on the show. Not once, but twice.
Yeah, hopefully this one goes through.
Yeah. I'm sitting here sweating, just nervous. That
Quadruple sound check.
That's right, yeah. So I found you because of a previous guest on the show, Dr. AJ Cohen of Up and Running PT, so shout out to him. And he told me about your channel, Small Advantages. So for those out there, what is that?
Yeah, so I have a YouTube channel called Small Advantages, and my elevator speeches, I teach Brazilians English. The bit longer story is back in 2014, I wanted to learn Portuguese to go to the World Cup. And so I taught myself Portuguese, and I came back more in love with Brazil than ever. And in 2015, I started making videos on YouTube. They were just little videos of my progress speaking Portuguese. And the views trickled in like 10 or 20 at a time. And most of them were from Brazilians. They weren't from Americans. They're from Brazilians looking at my progress. And they said, hey, you should start teaching English on YouTube. And it never really dawned on me. I thought, if anything, I would teach other Americans Portuguese because I wasn't fluent at that time, but I started making English tip videos, and the channel just really took off about a year later. Went viral through a series of happenstances, but now I have over 1 million followers, and it's my full-time job making these English tip videos. And I also talk about cultural differences between Brazil and the United States. and, I don't know, funny stories about differences between the Portuguese language and the English language.
Yeah. And so before you stumbled into this, what were you up to?
So I moved to Fort Collins in 2010 from, I grew up around Cleveland, Ohio, and I came here to do my PhD in atmospheric science. So 2010 to 2016, I got my master's and then my PhD studying weather patterns. And on the side, in my free time, I was learning Portuguese.
Dang. And then, so you were just going to go to the World Cup in Brazil. And then you thought, I want to learn a little bit of the language before I go. You post the videos up, and this turns up into being part of your career.
The internet is a miracle. I cannot, sometimes I look around the studio, which I built when we moved into our new house here with my wife, and I think, I can't believe that. In a way, I created this from nothing, but I never had the intention of doing that. It kind of grew. The channel grew so big that all of a sudden I looked one day and realized, oh my gosh, I'm making enough money from ad revenue and from sponsorships that I don't have to continue with the science career if I don't want to. And a hobby by definition is something that you love doing. And while I loved my science career, I love what I'm doing now even more.
Yeah. And before we had talked about how you got accidentally featured on like the Brazil's version of BuzzFeed. And one of your friends contacted you while you were on campus at CSU and they said, hey, you should get online. Something is happening.
That's exactly it. So at the time I started my channel in January of 2015. When the channel was shared by the BuzzFeed of Brazil, which is called Catraca Livre, it means free turnstile. It's for free events or things that people can take advantage of for free, including online resources. It had been about a year and a half, and I had maybe 30 videos online and a couple thousand views on my most popular one. And yeah, I got a message from a friend that, hey, you were just shared. And I looked at my viewer stats, which you can do on YouTube, and you can see real-time people clicking on your videos. And this unbelievable spike, like 1,000 times more than what I was getting per hour for clicks, I saw on the stats there. And it was an unbelievable feeling, and I tracked it, and I got, I think, 30,000, 50,000 followers that day. And that was the first time I really realized maybe I'll be able to make a career out of this.
And meteorology started to become in the background.
Yeah, when I was finishing writing my PhD, my dissertation, I kind of felt like I just run out of gas and I was coasting in the station because I would write, but I'd get bored with it after an hour and I just couldn't wait to get home to make more videos, study more Portuguese, and daydream about my next trip to Brazil.
Yeah. And now you have over 1 million subscribers on YouTube?
Yeah, something like 1.3 million subscribers on YouTube right now.
Dang, yeah. We are sitting with a pillow of the YouTube logo right here.
Yeah, that's right.
You have a couple of plaques as well?
Yeah, YouTube sends you a plaque when you hit 100,000 subscribers and 1 million subscribers, which are on the wall over there. And my wife got me this nice little YouTube pillow.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And you were on a talk show in Brazil. Like, I think we related to like Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah, his name is Danilo Gentili. He's the most popular late night talk show host in Brazil. And like most of Brazilians, he is learning English, like most of the world, I suppose. And so this talk show host had watched my channel before and invited me on the show. Brazil's an interesting case because let's say you go to Europe, for example, you go to France or Germany. In Germany, 90% of people can hold a fluent English conversation. But in Brazil, that number is around 7%. But Brazil is the 5th largest country in the world. Portuguese is the 5th most spoken language in the world. There's a huge need to be able to speak English. So it was one of those right place, right time type of things. I've always enjoyed language, and I always thought I was going to be a scientist, but I've realized recently that language is my passion. I just happen to be making these videos, and everyone in Brazil seems to be wanting to learn English.
So, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but why do you think you've caught on compared to hundreds of styles and different kinds of people who can teach English and Portuguese and back and forth? Why do you think Small Advantages caught on so much?
Well, first of all, again, I'm very thankful that I started in 2015. I think if I had started in 2018, it would have been a bit harder, my path. But I think that one thing that sets me apart, I got a PhD in atmospheric science at CSU, and when I told my friends and family that I'm going to be stopping my science career and becoming a YouTuber, a lot of them were like, well, why would you waste this career path that you spent 10 years preparing for. And so many of the skills I learned during my PhD, I still use in YouTube. And I think a big thing that I bring into my videos that sets me apart is the ability to, one, tell a story from the beginning to the end with a complete story arc. And so when I'm presenting an English tip, I know exactly how I'm going to take my student from beginning to finish. Because of my science career, you have to tell a story arc in scientific articles. Yeah. And you have to back up your reasoning. You can't just say, oh, TH is pronounced th, or we say it is raining and I don't know what the it is. You can't just throw a fact out there and expect your audience to believe it. You really have to show them why. So my science background helps me with that. Also anticipating questions that my viewers will have. So I think about when I used to present in scientific conferences, you think about the hands that are going to raise in the audience and ask you a question about maybe an odd figure or a statement you made that doesn't quite make sense.
Oh, yes.
And you try to anticipate those questions ahead of time. And every time I'm writing a script for a video, I try to anticipate those questions ahead of time.
Yeah. And we had discussed before, but one of, I think, the most fascinating, admittedly to myself, one of the most fascinating parts of your story is that you are a household, maybe not a household name, but you are a recognizable celebrity in another country, but you live here in Fort Collins. And your neighbor next door might not know who you are. You go to a brewery here in northern Colorado and people don't know who you are, but you've been, you are this person in Brazil.
It's a very strange situation. My wife and I were wondering, has it ever happened in the course of human history that someone is so recognizable in another country and not in their home country? When I go to Brazil, as soon as I get on the plane, I'm recognized by the stewardesses. My passport is stamped by someone who knows me. Because a lot of these people in the transportation industry are learning English, of course, but walking on the streets in Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, I'm recognized multiple times a day. And in a way, it's kind of nice to be here in the US and just I'm able to be like a normal guy, an anonymous face. But I'd be lying if I said it wasn't fun to go to Brazil and feel that fame a little bit. And also just to talk to the students whose lives you've made a difference in and hear about the job promotion they got because they picked up some English tips from me, or talk to a lot of the thankful students has been a really rewarding experience.
And I think some people will be envious of you in a similar role because you get to turn your fame on and off. Okay, like I'm going to head back to the States and I'm going to leave this attention behind. And then, like when you get on that plane to Brazil, that it's about to be turned back on. I think a lot of people, they want a certain amount of success and glamour and then they get trapped in this cycle and then it becomes too much and they're wearing hats and sunglasses and they only go on vacations on Mondays and Tuesdays and they can't even go to the grocery store and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's definitely, you still have to balance it a little bit. I mean, you could go crazy just posting on Instagram all the time and trying to make yourself even more famous and thinking that you're more of a big shot than you are. And I think it's also helped keep me level-headed, kept me humble being here.
Yeah. In your experience now, translating between English, Portuguese, teaching people both, and thinking about all the different nuances, have you found anything particularly difficult or challenging or things that you found along the way between the two languages?
So I think the two hardest things for learners of English are our pronunciation. I mean, we write O-U-G-H and that can be pronounced tough or cough or through. And there's a lot of exceptions to the rules. There are rules, but there's a lot of exceptions. Portuguese is a little easier on that front. The other thing that's really difficult in English is phrasal verbs. So we have a lot of verbs that you can have the verb to make. But if you put any one of 20 prepositions at the end, it completely changes the meaning. So to make over or to make out or to make do, we can sandwich two verbs together. And that's something that doesn't really happen in Portuguese. Portuguese is difficult because you can say, in English, I make, you make, we make, they make. But in Portuguese, you have a different conjugation for every person. Eu faço, ela faz, nós fazemos. So you have to change the conjugations and you have to memorize all these tables, which are easy for a native speaker of Portuguese. Any language has something that's difficult. And it's been really fun on the channel comparing these difficulties that someone going in each direction has.
Yeah. And Portuguese is similar to Spanish, right?
It is. I actually got a minor in Spanish from Valparaiso University, which is where I went to undergraduate. And that made learning Portuguese for the World Cup a lot easier. I have a textbook that is for native speakers of English who know Spanish, who want to learn Portuguese, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can start with a 40% foundation and build on it from there.
Now, A little personal, selfish history lesson. I don't actually know why the language in Brazil is called Portuguese. I've always kind of wondered this, but never really. Now I'm sitting down here with you and I get the chance to ask. Do you know the backstory?
Yeah, so, I mean, why is the language spoken in the United States called English?
I guess that's true.
We were colonized by the English, and same with Brazil and the Portuguese Empire. And Portuguese is also spoken in 3 or 4 countries in Africa and a couple Pacific area countries as well.
Right, okay. So it's kind of like how Canadians, there's a dominance of French.
Yes.
And a lot of old places of the English Empire throughout the world still know English, or it's like bilingual there, depending on where they're at.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And now that it seems so obvious to me, I'm going to regret asking that question.
No worries.
There may be some people listening, driving around NoCo right now, and are like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
You know, something else that drives Brazilians up a wall is when people don't know what the capital of Brazil is.
Okay.
So a lot of people will say Buenos Aires. They confuse Argentina and Brazil and not know that the capital of Brazil is not Buenos Aires. It's not Rio de Janeiro. It's Brasilia, which was a constructed city in the mid-1900s.
Oh, wow. So they made their own capital city, essentially.
Yeah, that's right. Brasilia is the largest city right now that didn't exist in 1950. I think it's got several million people living there now.
You know, that's interesting because you look at a map, right? And if we reflect back hundreds of years at how often territories used to change, we made new towns. People were like, I made a farm here. My last name's Johnson. This is Johnsonville. You know, like people just got to establish things back then. It's very strange now to think about with modern society that we could make new territories, new cities just like that. I mean, I'd be very interested to know, like in the state of Colorado, when was the last founded town, like the most recent established city? It's very interesting to think about that they founded it and then they made it their capital.
Yeah, truly. And I haven't been to Brasilia. I cannot wait to go. But the culture there is very interesting because everyone who emigrated there brought a bit of their own, whether it's from Northeast Brazil or South Brazil. And Brazil is incredibly diverse, just as diverse, if not more, than the United States in terms of customs, dialects, and even geography. So it's a fun mixture of that, I hear.
Yeah. Any idea why they decided to make their own new capital city? Was it location? Was it just a desire? Like, what was the capital before?
The capital before was Rio de Janeiro.
Okay.
And before that, it was Salvador back in the 1800s, I think. I don't know the actual motivation for moving to Brasilia. Yeah. And my Brazilian listeners are going to just rail me on that one.
That's all right. You're in the language business, not in the history business.
Yes.
So let's cut Gavin some slack.
Thank you.
So in addition to Small Advantages, you also recently started something called Toddy Gavin.
Yes,
and what is this?
So about 2.5 years ago, I have another language-loving friend, and he said, well, Gavin, you know Spanish, you know Portuguese, you should learn another language. And at the time, I was just starting to experience some of the YouTube fame, but also the pressure that comes with needing to post content regularly and making sure my videos are high quality and that I continue with good English lessons. And I told him, I don't really have time to learn another language. And that night, I realized, man, I tell my followers on YouTube all the time, my Brazilian followers, that the excuse that you don't have enough time is a poor one. You're going to make time for the things that are valuable to you. And so almost as a way to prove what I had been telling my Brazilian followers, that yes, you can focus on English, you can learn another language, even though your job is tough. I challenged myself to learn a completely different language. That was November of 2016. I made this decision to start learning Czech. So Toddy Gavin, which you mentioned, is my Czech YouTube channel.
Okay.
And in the same way that I started Small Advantages, kind of just putting videos up of my Portuguese progress, seeing the progress that I made month after month, I did the same thing in Czech on Toddy Gavin. And Toddy Gavin, by the way, means like Gavin here. How's it going?
Oh,
hey,
okay.
Gavin here.
Good.
And that channel went more or less viral in Czechia about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, May of 2018.
And how did they stumble upon this? Because I assume most people who are learning English and who speak Portuguese aren't also learning Czech. I mean, you might have had some people follow you because they like you, but I assume most people had to rediscover you.
Yeah, so Brazilian Portuguese and Czech have very little links. The audiences don't overlap at all. I wanted to grow Tady Gavin, my Czech channel, completely organically. That channel became well known because I started making videos about trying Czech food or 5 Czech verbs that I think are strange in comparison to English. And my small advantage in a way was that I already have a YouTube channel, and I knew kind of how to make videos well edited and make them catchy thumbnails and all that. And I'm realizing that people just like to see other people trying to learn their language and experience their culture. And so the Czechs who stumbled upon my videos kind of got that surge of pride, maybe in a way, and interest just seeing a foreigner learn their language. And that's why the Czech channel got popular. But for for all of my Brazilians listening to this podcast, I haven't told any of my followers on Small Advantages about Tady Gavin. I wanted the growth to be completely organic.
Oh man. And you're saying it now, here.
Yeah, this is the first revelation, and I'll probably make a video about it because I want to show my 1.3 million Brazilian subscribers that it is possible, A, to learn a language when you don't have a ton of time. And if you really, it sounds cheesy, but like if your heart is in it, you can go places and it's possible. I'm not a genius or anything. I study 45 minutes to an hour of Czech every day still 2.5 years later, and I'm still not fluent, but I'm pushing through. And so I want to use this Czech YouTube channel as motivation for my Brazilians learning English, that it is possible. It takes hard work, but you can be a normal guy and be fluent in English too.
So how big is Tady Gavin if you're now comfortable letting the world know about it?
Yeah, so as of right now, Tady Gavin is 130,000 subscribers strong. Okay. Which actually makes it percentage-wise more popular than Small Advantages. So if you think Brazil has a population of about 200 million, and I have about 1.3 million subscribers there. So let's say around 6 to 7% of Brazilians follow my YouTube channel. About 13% of Czechs follow my Czech channel because it's 130,000 out of only 10 million.
Dude. And then if Tady Gavin gets even bigger, you're going to be like, you won't be able to go anywhere and nobody doesn't know you in that country.
Yeah, really turning the fame on and off. But, you know, I don't like to consider myself like a flashy type of fame. Like I love when people come up to me and say, oh my gosh, are you Gavin? And chatting with them about their own language story. It's a beautiful thing. And I try to remain approachable, but of course, continue to grow my audience because that means more learners. And for me personally, that means more sponsorships. I work with language learning companies, and it makes what I do even more possible to a greater audience.
Yeah, you got into this because you want to make people's lives better. Yeah. And did that factor into why you called it Small Advantages?
You know, I called it Small Advantages because originally I had a blog called Small Advantages where I talked about what I perceived as small advantages that anyone could adapt in their life, like the top 10 opening chess moves, or why this smartwatch is better than this smartwatch, or how to read more books in a single year. And the small advantage that took off was how to learn Portuguese from Spanish back in the early days of the blog. And that's why I created a YouTube channel documenting a little bit of me speaking Portuguese, and here we are.
Dang. And so you had these 2 separate channels. You're learning all of this language and helping people out, and the groups didn't know about each other. You're like a guy who has what is the term? Like a flash of amnesia where they run away. And there's these extreme cases you'll see on like 60 Minutes or 2020 where people, they live a separate life for like a decade. And they somehow create a new identity. They get new ID cards. They don't know who they are. And then one day they wake up and they realize, oh my goodness, I've been living another life. And now they have like these dual realities that they've been living. And I just think that's so interesting that they didn't know about each other. And it is so neat to see that you had success with one situation with Small Advantages, and you still challenged yourself and said, I want to do a 3rd or 4th language, and I want to inspire people. Mm-hmm. That's just... Yeah,
we joke about having like a triple identity sometimes, or my wife says she feels like she's leading a double life because she's recognized in Brazil as well, just from being in some videos with me and being on a couple of my Instagram posts. It is a wild situation for sure, but it's fantastic to have achieved all this, doing something that helps other people again, and having the educational focus. I love that, and I try to keep that at the forefront.
Yeah, how often do you all go back to Brazil?
I go to Brazil about once a year. I'm going to be back there again this fall, which is going to be the spring down in Brazil. I always get in trouble talking about it in terms of fall and spring. So let's say September, October this year, promoting my book, which I'm writing down there. It's a bilingual English and Portuguese book, kind of talking about the experience of a gringo learning Portuguese and some fun Brazilian cultural differences. And I go to Czechia about once a year as well.
Okay, and to give me a geography lesson, where is Czechia?
It's in Central Europe. It's located next to Germany and Austria and Poland, kind of sandwiched in there.
Okay, see, I thought it was in Eastern Europe, so I was way off.
No, and I think Czechs often get a little irritated that people think that they're Eastern Europe. They always correct you and say, Central Europe, Ivan.
Okay, good to know for any of my Czech fans out there. I apologize. It reminds me, there's people who listen to this podcast who enjoy it, and they know who Ivan Wayne is because I'm the host. And I have students at 2 universities here in NoCo who have no idea I run a podcast. And so it has to be interesting for if this already happened or the day when it occurs when they're like, yo, I just found out that my psych instructor runs a podcast in the area. Like, that has to be strange. And I'm sure there's probably people who may have found your crossover already and you just don't know it.
Yeah, like Brazilians who've gone to the Czech channel.
Or vice versa.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly get this trickle of like a Portuguese comment on a Czech video every once in a while. But by and large, YouTube's pretty good at giving you demographic statistics. And like Iceland has more views of my Czech channel than Brazil. So right now, the dam has not broken, but I'm super excited to share it with my Brazilian subscribers.
Heck yeah. So how long has it been now? Remind me, since you started all of this journey.
So 4 years ago, I started Small Advantages, and 2 years ago, I started Tady Gavin, my Czech channel.
And so now you're in the middle of, you said, promoting an upcoming book. You're running both channels. And how is it now? How's all this feel? I mean, you are a professional YouTuber. You're like every 10-year-old's dream, right?
Yeah.
And you're living this. And, how's it feel compared to when you started out?
With great power comes great responsibility. It's fantastic. Again, I look around my studio and think, I can't believe this is my job. It is a lot of work, and I am my own boss. I have to set my own limits, and I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. So there can always be that pressure that, I need to post 3 videos this week. I need to. And there's really no reason other than every once in a while I'll get comments like, oh, Gavin, I haven't seen you in a week. Where are you? And you're going to pay more attention to these comments from these pessimists, I suppose, or people who don't respect your space. And those comments have an outsized impact on how you feel about your channel. So you could get 1,000 thumbs up, but those 3 thumbs down are the ones you're going to be wondering about at night. So the first 2 years of having Small Advantages, I didn't pay as much attention to the fact that I was creating this artificial pressure to myself. Nowadays, I think I'm a lot better at being okay if I only post 1 video in a week. A video is a lot I'm sure that you know how much work a podcast is to produce. A video is a lot of work to write an hour, maybe writing a script, an hour to recording, 4 to 5 hours of editing, an hour just to make the thumbnail and choose a catchy title and write the description. It's a whole day's work for a single video if I'm lucky. So it's been very interesting having to learn how to balance time with all of that.
As a public figure yourself in multiple countries, you're a very brave soul for still reading the YouTube comments, because if there's one thing people learn about the internet, it's that if there's a place not to read comments, it's on YouTube.
Something that's absolutely true. YouTube comments are like the cesspool of the internet very often. But something I'm really proud of with my channels is the community that I've grown and people helping each other. And I try to go to the comments to answer questions that people have and to gauge interest about future videos. I probably get 5 ideas for future videos for every video I post just from the comments. But I'm really proud about how constructive the comments are. And I think a lot of that comes from the respect that I try to show to Brazilian culture and Czech culture. I try to cook like they do. I try to understand their language, of course. I try to listen to their music. And learning a language makes you understand a culture 100 times better. And then you add on to that understanding their history, their politicians, their bands, their cartoons that kids grew up with. You can really connect with people, and it makes an experience traveling to a foreign country where you've learned their language 1,000 times deeper. And I'm almost scared to go to a country now where I haven't learned the language, because I know that I'm going to be missing out on that. But I think that's what I see manifested in the comments, is this mutual respect that we have for each other.
That is just awesome. You're out there, you are helping people, you're inspiring, and you're doing amazing work, man. You fell into it. So it's fascinating, and kudos, man. That's awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I can't believe I say that I'm a YouTuber. When I have jury duty, I typically say like I'm a linguist or I'm a translator because I don't want to go there with the whole I'm a YouTuber thing. People get the negative image.
Yeah.
But I'm really trying to make a positive out of that.
People would look over and think that you had Fortnite training and that you were a streamer or something if you said you were a YouTuber.
Yeah, I've heard about Fortnite. I don't even know what that is right now. So, yeah,
well, I can
some sort of video game.
I can educate you what that is after we finish recording here.
Perfect.
So we can do a knowledge swap here.
All right.
If people are very interested in reaching out to you, where can they connect with either of these YouTube channels or social media?
Yeah, so just how the channel name sounds, go to Small Advantages on YouTube or Tady Gavin, which is Tady Gavin, and you can put that in YouTube, or just honestly Google Gavin Portuguese or Gavin Czech, and all of my stuff comes up.
Okay, Gavin Roy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ivan.
This was awesome, and I am just sitting here with bated breath hoping this recorded.
Yeah, eu também, me too.
If you enjoy the More You NoCo, please check out our other episodes. We've had such a variety of interesting and awesome people, you never know what you're going to find. I've been in awe and wonder going on this journey around northern Colorado. Read the episode descriptions, take a shot, and discover our NoCo community. Trevor Fossey, always putting in the time to edit and mix these episodes. Thank you so much for your dedication and hard work. Russell Isaac Long, our guest on episode 67 of the show, makes all our music here at the More You NoCo. Thank you, good sir. We are on Facebook and Instagram if you're interested in staying connected with us, or just to see bonus visual content in addition to this very audio-driven podcast experience. We will be back soon with another conversation, exploring and connecting the people who make up Northern Colorado. Until next time, peace!